All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another one of my interviews here on Drip Talk with Blake Disnick Roberts. Today, I have a very special guest with me. He is a former pro wrestler. He has wrestled for the companies such as WCW, WWF, NWA, USWA, AGPW, Mishinoko Pro, and much, much more wrestling companies. He is also one half of the former WCW tag team, the WCW Patriots, with Chip Breaker, or no, Firebreaker Chip, sorry, and then one time WCW US Tag Team Champions. So he is no other than Todd Champion. So we're going to get him on in here and then we will start on with the interview.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Thank you for taking your time out to do this interview. It's a pleasure.
Not a problem.
All right, so I'll start off by asking you my first question.
Okay.
When did you start doing wrestling and what made you want to do it?
Well, that's an interesting story. I was with the San Francisco 49ers and got injured and got released and kind of went back to North Carolina to visit some family. My grandparents were still alive at that time, and that was the hotbed of the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions. And bumped into some people in a sporting goods store, and they said, "You ought to wrestle." And I said, "I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go back to California." And anyway, to make a long story short, I met Nelson Royal. We chatted, had a meeting with Dusty Rhodes, got in a ring in a barn, and started working out. There were no wrestling schools back then, so you either had to know somebody or something like to get you even to even get a chance to talk to somebody. So got in the ring and worked out for 6 or 7 months and started my career with the NWA in 1986.
Nice. What age were you about when you officially knew you wanted to become a wrestler?
I was about 25, 26 years old. Yeah. So, I'd played football since I was 8 years old and, played my college ball at Utah State University and had a football scholarship there. And so played a lot of football in my career, and wrestling was just something that I said, well, if it doesn't work out, I'll go back and get a real job. So, luckily I was athletic enough to survive, and Dusty used to send me to the TV shows, and I would watch and learn every day, and did dark matches to get some experience because that's the only way you could do it. And one day Dusty came and said, "I'm going to change your name to Todd Champion," and the rest is kind of history after that.
For sure, yep. And about football, what was the change like for you from changing from football to wrestling? What was that change like?
The change wasn't that big a deal. I was already in shape, lifted weights, I'm used to, getting hit. The difference is that wrestling is year round, it's not seasonal. So you can, at least when the season's over, you can rest and kind of let your body catch up. And in the wrestling business, you're on the road, 280 days out of the year, basically, and it's a lot, I think it's a lot harder on your body over the long haul.
Yeah. Did you watch wrestling as a kid? If so, who was your favorite wrestler growing up?
Didn't watch it as a kid. I lived in North Carolina, and it was, like I said, the hotbed, and I'd heard of the names. Some of the names, Johnny Weaver was kind of a regional hero there back in the day. Really didn't start paying attention, real attention. I knew it was out there. I didn't really start paying attention until I started actually broke into the business. I mean, I knew about it. My grandmother was a big wrestling fan. She was in Oregon, and they had a big wrestling organization in Oregon, and I didn't know this till after I got in the wrestling business that she used to have wrestling parties at her house. I had
Oh,
no idea. I had no idea about that, and unfortunately, she passed away before um, got a chance to see me do what I do. But yeah, she was a big wrestling fan at that time, and she would have went crazy if she'd have been alive and knew that I was doing it. You know.
yeah. Who is your favorite wrestler to watch nowadays if you watch the business?
Um, man, there's so many different guys out there now. I mean, um, you know, The Rock is one of them. I love his interviews. I think he's probably got some of the best promos out there. I will say Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, guys like that were, ahead of their time. They were doing cutting those kind of interviews before, it was a thing. So today, I just watch them all. I don't really have a favorite, but I'll turn on the television and watch some of the programs and just try to stay a little up to date, with what's going on. The wrestling business has changed so much since I broke into the business, in
Mm-hmm.
1986. When I wrestled, it was more of a regional business. It wasn't national. And then, of course, when I went to the NWA, and then, of course, we were bought out by WCW. Once it hit cable, then, it became a coast to coast type of promotion. So people that saw you wrestle in North Carolina watched you on Saturday in Los Angeles on whatever local station in Los Angeles was. So it was becoming a national thing and not more of a regional thing. And it's just kind of exploded from there with, cable TV and satellite and all these different things now with the technology. And now, you can, look at anything on your phone, and, it's a different world now, totally different world.
For sure, definitely agree. Because the wrestling business back then was, like you said, really different from now. They changed it up a lot. So,
Yeah, and I think too, fans did not have access to the wrestlers like they do now.
yep.
Fans weren't allowed, uh, didn't really know anything about our business, and we kept everything that we did at a very very close to us, and our business has been exposed now and all that. But when I was wrestling, uh, there was never a question. They never questioned the outcomes. No one knew what the next thing was going to go on. There were no chats or anything like that where they could, no, there was wrestling magazines, but it didn't get inside the business and tell you, who was going to be the next champion. That was never done. We weren't allowed to congregate with our opponents at all. If I was wrestling Ric Flair, we could not be seen in the same restaurant together. We could not be in the same room together in public. It was that well kept. And I don't know if you remember Magnum TA. Um,
Yep.
yeah, he was a phenomenal wrestler, and he was in that really terrible car accident, and he was in the hospital. And Arn Anderson and Flair, they were all really good friends, but they could not go to the hospital to see Magnum TA because the business was that protected. But
Wow.
luckily, Charlotte police officer, knew a security guard and let some of the guys go in the back way just so they could go see him in the hospital. So it was a different time. It was a more protected business than it is today. Um, that being said, you know, it may change. It may go back to whatever. But right now, back then versus today, you would have never seen the same two guys even talking to each other if they had a match with each other in somewhere. So that's kind of the way it's changed a lot like that. Besides, television and technology and all that good stuff.
Yep. Definitely. So I know you mentioned earlier that Dusty Rhodes brought you in to help you. Was there anybody else that helped train you to become a wrestler?
Absolutely. Nelson Royal was the guy that brought me to meet Dusty. Nelson Royal was an old school wrestler, had a big Western store in Mooresville, North Carolina, and he had a ring in a barn there. And he's the one that really started my whole career. Uh, he trained me, and we worked out, and it was hot in those hot barns, and it was old school stuff, man. But it prepared me. It really prepared me for the ring, and helped me in that area.
Yeah. Was there anybody who inspired you family and then also wrestling wise to get into the business?
Well, my family didn't know what I was doing because I was out of the house when I was 17 and a half years old. I'd gotten a full ride football scholarship, and I graduated early out of high school, and I went to college. So I was still a senior in high school when I was playing college football, technically. So the wrestling thing was they didn't see that coming. Nobody did. And they were just, they weren't in shock. They were just kind of a little bit, what made you do that? Cause
Hmm.
cause everybody owned businesses, and my parents were pastors. And so, it was a totally something out of left field, but I always had that little entertainment bug in me because in high school I was doing theater, and even though I was a football player, I liked to act and do all that. So that was probably deep down, but yeah, it came out of left field. Nobody even had a clue. Then I showed up on television one day and everybody saw me.
Yeah. And then your friends probably at school then were probably like, wait, that's Todd Champion.
Yeah, well, interesting story. There's a guy I played college ball with. His name is Greg Cragen, and he played with the Denver Broncos. And he was played defensive tackle for them for years and years and years. And it was, I'll never forget this. It was he was they were getting ready. There was this Friday or Saturday, I can't remember what day it was, and they're getting ready to go play a game. And so he calls me out of the blue and goes, Todd, he said, my buddy here doesn't believe that you and I went to college together, and da 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 da. And he made a bet with him. And so I got on the phone and started talking with his buddy, and that's another Denver Bronco professional football player. And he won his bet, obviously. But yeah, so it was kind of catching people off guard. But once they saw me, to this day, when we meet and for homecoming and stuff like that, they don't want to talk about football. They want to talk about wrestling because it's a different world. Not a lot of people get to experience that world. And have a good career with it.
Yeah. Who would you say has been like the stiffest wrestler you've gone in the ring with?
The stiffest wrestler,
Yeah.
o- other than myself. uh, Probably. Well, I worked with so many good guys. Probably I'll say probably the Japanese guys when I wrestled in Japan. They were probably the stiffest, but it was okay. I didn't mind it. It didn't bother me at all. I kind of liked it being a little tighter. It just a better feel. But it was probably the Japanese guys.
Yeah. And did you notice the difference between the Japanese wrestling type and from the American?
Yeah, I did. The Japanese guys were, like you said, a little more stiff, a little more physical, I'd say. Um, which is fine. Like I said, that style didn't bother me. I could do either one. I didn't mind either one. It kind of let me be me a little bit too. And if I wanted to lay one in, they were okay with it, and they laid one in, and we just returned, potatoes, so to speak. But so yeah, it was the different types. It didn't really bother me at all.
Yeah. So I know you also mentioned drama. You were in drama class when you were younger. So what how did drama class help you into becoming a wrestler? Because you needed possibly probably that because to be in the ring for talking on the microphone, performing in front of people. So how do you think drama helped you into becoming a wrestler?
Well, you got to learn how to get into character, and it probably helped me that way. A little bit of it was kind of natural. Um, I couldn't spit out stuff like a Dusty Rhodes or a Ric Flair. They had their own style because back then they didn't write your interviews like they do now. They can get it now. They write the interviews down. We had to kind of do it off the top of our heads. Ad lib our interviews. They just give you say here, say this, and boom, boom, and you just did it. So a little bit different, but it prepared me a little bit. I don't know if it prepared me a lot because pro wrestling is a very physical, but it got more into the promo side of things. Usually, you know, the interviews were few and far between. On Saturdays, we go down to TBS and we have to be there like studios at like 7 in the morning, and then we did our interviews and we had those studio matches, and then we were in the Omni that night for the house shows. So, it's the storytelling was done in the ring, not so much on the microphone. Um, that's what I see the difference in wrestlers today than back when I wrestled was you didn't have to get on the mic. If you told your story in the ring, the people knew exactly what was going on. The promos were just kind of a cherry on top of the ice cream as far as that's concerned. That people would watch a match and know exactly what you were trying to do, and you didn't have to talk a lot about it. So obviously, you want to present yourself and get the people familiar with you, but being on the mic, that was kind of secondary. I mean, that was, the guys did it. We did those promos, but it seems like today's wrestling, that's all they do is talk and talk and talk and talk and talk.
Hmm.
I'd like to see less talk and more matches. If it was me as a fan today, I'd want to see more matches. You can do the talking later because I think, to do those interviews in the middle of the ring, that's something that kind of transitioned from doing it, in front of a blue screen to the ring, which kind of creates, I guess it's okay, but I just think there's too much of it. I think fans, your old school fans, they don't like all the talking. They want to see the fight, you know so they can figure it out on their own. They don't need to have a whole backstory told to them before these two guys get together and wrestle. So, like I said, it's changed. The business has changed quite a bit. It's passed me by as far as that's concerned. I do watch it though, and I still watch it, and I see some guys every once in a while that I knew, and it's good to see them and stuff like that. But that's so time marches on like anything else. The game of football's changed since I played, so I guess it's all kind of relative in that point of view.
Yeah. And on the promo side of things, yeah, I agree with you because one time I was at a SmackDown show and here in Wisconsin, and all it seemed like is that it was like I was watching it on like a big movie theater screen because there was
Hmm.
promo after promo after promo,
Hmm.
and it was like I'm here for the wrestling, not to watch it on like
Right,
the TV and see these promos, you know.
right,
But
right.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the one part about it. I mean, it's all it. The fan experience is the fan experience. I think sometimes all that other stuff takes away from it. Like you said, you were there to watch the wrestling. You can catch up on the promos anytime. You want to see those guys in the ring do their thing. That's what you're there for. So, everybody's got their different take on it. Um, but today, it's just I would rather see more wrestling. If you watch some of the matches from the mid to late '80s, early '90s, mid '90s. You look at a match like Macho Man and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. You watch their WrestleMania match, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't think there's ever been a match like that ever. I mean, Macho Man and Randy, they were both athletes in high school and college, and man, if you watch that match, they didn't have to talk. If you watch that match, man, they might have did a little promo before their match, but that was a 35-minute match of just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And You watched that match and you were a believer. There wasn't none of this,
Mhm.
other stuff going on. Jake the Snake Roberts was a phenomenal psychologist in the ring. Uh, he could cut a promo better than anybody, but he could tell a story in the ring too. That he didn't have to do a promo. He could get in the ring and everything you wanted to know or he wanted you to know, it could do it in the ring. Ric Flair, same thing. He could do it in the ring. He didn't have to cut promos. I mean, he could get in the ring and do it. Some guys have to cut promos to cover up for maybe some little bit of lack of talent for whatever reason or charisma. So they got to cut these promos so they get their point across. Back when I wrestled, it was you get your point across when you're in the ring. And so, so that's how it's changed a little bit there. So, and plus the guys are making a lot more money than we did now.
Yeah. What do you consider to be a weakness and then a strength in wrestling for you personally?
A weakness and a strength in pro wrestling,
Yeah.
or for me personally, I think the weakness is, um, well, I don't know. The strength of pro wrestling, or my thing is, it just, you know, with everything going on now, it's a global business now. So that's the strength of it. People in Saudi Arabia know who you are. People in, wherever in East Africa and Australia and Europe. So wrestling has expanded its borders from the United States. So it's a global phenomenon. Um, I think the weakness is something that we already talked about. There's too much yapping and not enough wrestling. Um, so that's my take. I mean, you know, so everybody's got a different view, but that's what I think. Or that's how I feel.
Yeah. Sorry if you can hear my dogs in the back.
My dog's asleep on the couch.
Yeah. So, is it hard traveling from show to show, and what is the worst or best thing about traveling?
Well, the best thing about traveling is you get to spend it with your buddies. Um, you get to spend time with the guys, and then even you like that camaraderie. The worst thing about it is just how long it is, and it's not glamorous like people think it is. You're living out of your suitcase most of the time. It's only glamorous when everything's on television. There's a lot of work that goes into the production and all that stuff. So, um, like I said, it looks glamorous, but it's a lot of hard work and a lot of hotels and a lot of long rides in cars and living out of suitcases. But like I said before, just being with the guys, that kind of keeps your spirits up and you know being able to be with them. That's what keeps you going.
For sure. Yeah. And did you ride with anybody to like the shows? And if so, who were like your riding buddies here
Oh
and there?
gosh, there's a ton of them, man. Boogie Woogie Man was one of them. Rock and Roll Express. Gosh, the Italian Stallion. Ronnie Garvin. Uh, Gosh, there's so many. Sam Houston. Um, Gosh, there's so many. I mean, we all just tried to, because we'd fly into town and then have to be in another town and have to rent a car, and drive to that next town, and then get a plane back. So, everybody was trying to, you know, connect with everybody and just, you're on the road, and that's what you do.
Yeah. Who was your first opponent in front of a crowd, and how did you feel going into that first match?
My first opponent was a guy called the Golden Terror. He wore a mask, and that was my first TV appearance. And I was nervous as you don't understand. I got so tired just walking to the ring, all that anxiety and just nervousness and everything. And but anyway, we had about a 10-minute match on television, and I won that match, and that kind of got the butterflies out of me, you know. Um, so yeah, that the Golden Terror was the very first TV match ever as in a singles match.
Yeah. How would you say the crowd reacted when they seen you for the first time in the ring?
Well, that's a good question. Well, they reacted pretty good because I'd already been wrestling in a lot of dark matches, so they knew who I was. I just hadn't been on television yet. So when I won that first match, the crowd really responded, and that you know, then people started seeing me in the store, and they, oh, you're that guy. Then they figured out it was Todd Champion, and then of course then they'd recognize me from there. So, over time it just grew. Like anything else. I think the biggest thing that put me on the map was when I had a TV match, main event match with Ric Flair for the TV title. And even though I didn't win that match really taught me a lot about being a professional and how good he really was in the ring, you know. And from that point on, it's like a light switched on. It was, and I got it at that point.
Yeah. If you got to go back in time and wrestle anyone that has passed away, who would that be?
If I could go back in time and wrestle someone who's passed away, hmm,
Yeah.
that's a good question. Um, hmm, somebody that I wrestled with that's passed away, or just anybody that's passed away?
Anybody that has passed away that you like to wrestle.
Oh, I would probably, I'd probably say, man, there's so many guys. Um, I'd probably, probably Randy Savage.
Yeah.
I mean, because he was an athlete, and you know, and when you're a baby face, you do what the heel tells you to do. The heels call the match, and me being an athlete, being a big guy, being a big athlete, but I could move like a little guy. I think if I'd have wrestled with somebody like that for any amount of time, it would have been game on for me. But he would be the guy probably that has passed away that I would probably like to try. Because I think he would be a great experience.
Yeah, that would be a great match. Who is or was like your top dream opponent?
Who was my top opponent, dream opponent? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
Um, Probably Ric Flair was my top opponent. On a dream opponent, well, Jerry the King Lawler was another one. Because I beat him for the title there, Jerry Lawler. Um, then there was the Freebirds as a tag team. The Freebirds were pretty cool. Um, so there's a lot of there was so much talent. I mean, when I wrestled, they call it the big man era, where there was me, guys like Lex Luger, the Road Warriors, the Barbarian, the Warlord. I mean, it looked like NFL football team walking through the airports. Uh, Everybody's 6'4", 6'5", 300 pounds, 310, 290, two. Everybody was like that. It just and then there were you know, so during the big man era, I mean, that's just the way it was. And being a big guy that can move and run and be athletic, it kind of helped me at that point. So another wrestler I meant to say I'd probably like to work with. He's not dead though. Terry Taylor. He
Oh
was
yeah.
a Yeah, he was a really good friend. And he was a phenomenal athlete as well. So when guys are athletes, um, man, and you're an athlete and you guys work and you get that mojo going, man, you can do some pretty fantastic things.
Yep. Do you usually get along and become friends with most of your opponents?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a job. It's something that we do. I mean, you're not going to get along with everybody. I mean, that's just normal. Uh, but really, I hate to say it, I got along with everybody.
Yeah.
I got along with everybody. I mean, I was there to do my job just like they were, and I wanted to do the best job that I could, win, lose, or draw, and that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. Who is someone you would like to wrestle that you have already wrestled before?
Mm. Someone that I already wrestled before, like if I had to wrestle again, um,
Yep.
probably. Let me think for a second. There's a ton of guys. There's a ton of guys. Oh, I know. I know. It'd be Steve Austin, stunning Steve Austin. He used to be called.
Yeah.
Now it's Stone Cold. Yeah, he'd be a guy I'd like to wrestle again. We had good matches.
Yeah, that'd be great. Who would you number down to your three top favorite opponents in your career?
Top three favorite opponents? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
probably. Oh, I'd say Steve Austin would be one of them. Ric Flair would be another one. Um, and I'd say, I can't think. I went blank here. Flair, stunning Steve. You know who I had a really good match with? I just watched the other day was Larry Zabisco.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I wrestled him twice during this one thing show, and he was awesome. He was awesome. So those are three off the top of my head. Probably there's probably more in there. I just can't. Probably, you know what? I take say Arn Anderson's another one, part of the Four Horsemen. Of course, Ric Flair. Everybody knows that. But
Yeah.
Tully Blanchard, another guy I wrestled. So there's a lot of really good talent, man. That I would wrestle them every night of the week. I wouldn't care. It'd be so much fun.
Yep. So if you could make a Survivor Series match, including you with four wrestlers of any era that are still alive today, who would you choose as partners?
Ah, okay. That's a really good one. I'd definitely choose my tag team partner, Firebreaker Chip. Um, Probably Survivor Series would be me, Firebreaker. Um, I'd probably get Lex Luger and probably Terry Taylor.
Yeah, that'd
That would be
actually be a great group.
yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't mind the
And I think,
Barbarian too. Barbie was a lot of fun to wrestle.
yeah, because I think Lex Luger would definitely fit your persona that you
Right,
guys both did.
right.
Would you rather be in a street fight or a death match?
Well, street fight, death match, somebody's got to die, right? I don't want to do that. So I'd probably give you street fight.
Yeah. Were you in any of like type of those matches during your wrestling career? Did you ever do
uh,
like any type of street fights?
yeah, well, the one match, the Russian chain match, I don't know if you've ever seen that match before. Um, with Ivan Koloff, Uncle Ivan, we called him. But the Russian chain match is pretty brutal, where you're chained to each other with these big chains, and you got to pull the guy that he's got to touch all four corners in order to make it work.
Oh
So,
yeah.
hmm so the Russian chain match was a pretty tough gig to do. So that was my first one I did in the Charlotte Memorial Coliseum in North Carolina. That was one of my first matches.
Yeah. So would you now rather be in a blindfolded match, handcuffed to your opponent, or a dog collar?
Probably handcuffed. I don't like none of the other stuff.
Is there any piece of merch that you have or had that was sold out pretty quickly?
Um, the bandanas that I used to wear, the American flag bandanas I used to wear on my wrists, couldn't keep those in stock. People bought those like crazy. And, I still have my wrestling jacket. As a matter of fact, they're upstairs in my room right now. My wrestling jacket, the one you see a lot of me on the internet in, it's hanging out upstairs and with my belts and my helmets and all that other stuff. But yeah, the bandanas, and then WCW did a lot of Patriot stuff, All American stuff, and so that stuff sold pretty well, did pretty well.
Yeah. So you have like the original army jacket?
Yeah, yeah, I sure did.
Nice.
A few years ago when I was back in the gathering, and I hadn't done an autograph session in 20 years, and finally went, and I brought that jacket in and put it on display so people could see it and take pictures of it and stuff.
Nice. And I'm also guessing when you were like with the handkerchiefs when you were walking down, people were probably like taking them and stuff, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I so I started just giving them to kids and everything and handing them out, throw them into the ring and stuff like that. But yeah, those were the probably the most popular ones, I guess, other than some of the T-shirts and things.
Yeah. What is your favorite horror movie and favorite horror character if you have one?
Horror movies? Wow, I haven't watched a horror movie forever. I take that back. I like horror movies. I like kind of the old school stuff. The vampire stuff and all that. I'm kind of into all that kind of weird stuff. I don't watch it that much anymore, but I used to watch it all the time. It just fascinated me.
Yeah. Is there any time a fan has seen you in public and got like super surprised and are excited if you remember like a big moment of that?
Yeah, I mean, I was in California one time, and I was actually when I was wrestling in the Central States, but I was in California visiting for Christmas. And I went to the mall with my mom in LA, and I was sitting down, and that was when cable and everything was cross country now. And I was sitting down, kind of just waiting on her. She was shopping. I had a baseball cap on and a sweatsuit, and this kid kind of walked by me and just kind of stared at me and kept walking. Then he turned around, and then about the fourth time, he finally stopped. He goes, "You're Todd Champion. I never thought I'd ever see you here." And I'm sitting at the mall waiting on my mom. Yeah, so yeah, you got a little excited. Got a little excited at the mall or something like that.
Yeah. He probably had to take 4 walk-bys because he probably had to like look it up and make sure you were the right guy.
Well, you got to remember now, this is 1988, 89. There was nothing to look up.
Oh, true. True.
It was either you saw me on TV, or that's the only way you kind of knew the television. So, and I had, cap on and tank top and sunglasses and sweats. And I was just, like I said, I was just sitting down waiting on my mom. And of course, I was pretty big. I stood out in the crowd anyway. So it was hard for me not to get noticed when I was, 290, 300 pounds. So,
Yeah. Do you still get noticed today sometimes?
Not as much. You know, every your hardcore fans will figure me out. Where I work now, that's a whole different story. They all know what I did for a living before I got into the business development car business stuff. And so that's all they want to do is talk about wrestling. And sometimes I have to work and I'm a director now. So I have to send them, say, I don't want to talk about wrestling. We got to go do this, do that. But so they'll all go and look at videos and then come back and tell me, I just watched one of your matches. So
If a movie was made about your career, who would you want to play you?
if a movie was made about my career, who would I want to play me? Hmm. Oh, probably. Well, shoot, I don't know. Never thought of that. Um, what's the guy that probably the closest thing? What's the guy that played Thor? Did all those movies? You know, the big tall
Oh,
blonde dude.
Chris Evans.
He'd probably be the guy. I think he'd be
Yeah, I
good.
could see that fitting. Yeah.
A good match. Yeah,
What is generally like your favorite music to listen to in your spare time?
man, I love music. I love all different kinds of music. I've got a whole Spotify of just from classical to rock and roll to country to R&B. So I like the older stuff. You know, I'm a big Led Zeppelin fan, Boston, ELO, you know, those Journey, you remember all those guys. You know, those are big
Hmm.
mega bands, you know, the Rolling Stones and Van Halen and people like that. You know, I listen to all that and then you know, I'd like country too. You know, I like country and western. I listen to all different genres of country and western. Um, and every once sometimes when I'm studying or reading or whatever, I'll listen to classical, kind of calm me down a little bit, you know. So I like all types of music. I was raised in church, so I was raised around music as well. So
Yeah.
music's been a part of my life for a long time.
Hmm. If you got to choose the stipulation for your match, what stipulation would you choose?
That there's no stipulations.
That works. Simple and easy.
Yeah, yeah.
I think everybody then would want to wrestle you.
You never know. You know, we had when I had a match with when I beat Lawler for the title, Mid South heavyweight title. Burt Prentice was my manager, and so he interfered, and we beat him. And then so what we did is the next time Burt Prentice was handcuffed to Jeff Jarrett, so me and Lawler could have a fair match. You know, because I was a heel then, and that was a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah. What has been the funniest thing a fan has said to you before?
The funniest thing a fan has said to me. Oh, the funniest thing. There's been a lot of funny things. The funniest one? That's a good. Um, shoot. They say you hear so much when you're in the ring and the fans are yelling at you. Oh, I know what the funniest thing was. Um, we were wrestling in the Mid South Coliseum, and I and Jerry Lawler had brought me in as a heel. I'd never been a heel before, and so I had to cut a couple promos, and I pretty much insulted everybody in Elvis Presley in Memphis. And so I got to the ring, and there's this little old lady on the front row, and I bet she was 90 years old in a walker. And she was just cussing me Oh God, that little old lady. I think if I'd have got down and she'd have jumped over the rail and tried to fight me. She was fired up, and so I was kind of waiting on Jerry to come out. So I'm standing there, and so I could hear I told the referee, I said, "Watch this," and I turned over and I said, "Hey, you!" And she was yelling at me. She realized I was talking to her. She stopped. I said, "Did you buy a ticket to come in tonight to watch this match?" She goes, "Yes, I did, you blankety blank blank blank." And I said, "Well, thanks for making my Mercedes Benz car payment." Oh, she got really mad after that. think they had to give her think they had to give her some oxygen or something. She was so fired up. But that was pretty funny.
Yeah. If you probably got close, you would probably grab the walker and start swinging it.
Yeah, she'd have
You
probably
never
hit me
know.
with a cane or something. I had to get a police escort out. I was in Kentucky
Oh.
and wrestling Lawler in a main event, and we had just a knockdown drag out match, and my fiance at the time was with me, and I'd created so much heat that the policeman went and got my fiance out of the stands and told her to stand next to him. And I'm coming down, getting escorted back to the locker room and getting dressed, and the policeman comes up to me and goes, "You need to walk with us to the car, and then we're going to escort you to the freeway because there's like three guys want to beat you up." Oh, they were mad at me. So, and my fiance couldn't believe those people were so mad at me. Uh, but that's such is life, right?
Yeah. Was it like fans or was it like the other wrestlers?
No, it was the fans. They were just, I beat Lawler again. I hit him with a garbage can or a chair or something, and I pinned him, and they were mad again at me. And then that's when we went back to the Mid South for a rematch for the title, and we sold the place out. I mean, it was really, really a good show. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. What would you say has been like a best fan compliment you've like either received at like a show or convention?
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of compliments people give you. No, just really, there's so many different things. I don't think I can pinpoint one comment or compliment or anything. And probably one of them was probably a compliment a fan gave me one time is I think it was after a show and I happened to bump into somebody at a restaurant or something that watched me and I went over and signed an autograph and sat down at the table and said hello to everybody and they were kind of amazed that I even spent that much time, to go out of my way to just be nice to them, you know, because I think some of the guys are not nice to the fans, and you got to think they're the ones that pay your salary because they're buying the tickets to go to the shows, and that's how you make a living. So why wouldn't you be nice to them, right? So
Yeah.
that's just the way I looked at it.
Yeah. What about which wrestler has given you the best advice and or compliment?
Um, Man, I can't. I just there's so many different things. Oh, we had a match in WCW, and it was a TV taping, and it was a good match. I mean, it was a tag team match, and it was pretty heated, had a lot of energy. And then after the match, I'm just kind of sitting at my locker getting dressed, and one of the promoters from WCW at the time comes over. He says, "Man, that was one of the hottest matches I've seen yet." He said, "Keep up the good work." I said, "Well, thank you, sir." That was all he said. He never talked to me either. This guy never said a word to anybody hardly. He just kind of came in, did his thing, and left. And that was kind of a nice compliment.
I mean, definitely if he hasn't talked to anybody, I mean, you might have felt special in that moment.
Well, anytime somebody pats you on the back and makes you feel good, then somebody appreciates your work and what you've done,
Hmm.
and a lot of wrestlers. I mean, we used to, I had you know matches with some really good guys, and after the match, man, we'd go back and shake hands, and they'd say, "Great job, great job, keep it up," and that made you feel good, made you feel good.
For sure. Yep.
It made worth being on the road all that time. It made that drive just a little bit easier. You know.
Yep. Do or did you prefer being a heel or babyface more in wrestling?
Uh, well, I was a baby face most of my career. The only time I was a heel was when Jerry Lawler turned me heel, and I actually had a lot of fun being a heel because it let me. I could kind of express myself. They let me, host the show. You know, when I was in the Mid South, so I could have that heel persona and all that. So I kind of the creative side of me, that I enjoyed that, and almost wish I'd have did a little more, and made that character a little more heelish, so to speak. And that all comes with experience and time, you know. So, but I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah. I think if they kept you as a heel, I feel like you would have done great things as a heel if they just kept you as it and
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know.
and you got to back then they we could not the creativity was different back then. I think guys have more input on what they do now than when I wrestled. I mean, I did what I was told, not what I wanted to
Yeah.
do. So today they have more input on their creativity. They could just go in and sit down with the promoter and say, "Hey, I got this idea." When I wrestled, we didn't do that. We didn't go say, "Hey, I want to try this or I want to try that." They basically came in and told you, "Here's what we're going to do. This is what you're doing." And you didn't go in and say, "Well, I got a better idea." No, you wouldn't say that to the promoters back when I wrestled. But
Yeah.
now they can go and say, "I've got a better idea," or "What do you think about this?" or "Let's try that." And I think that's what really helps some of the guys, as far as just, you know, enhancing their characters, so to speak.
Yep. Was there any time you was there any time in your career that a crowd member came out of the crowd and attacked you, or any time that you've personally witnessed that happening, or
No, the example I told you about Kentucky. Well, in the Mid South Coliseum, there are people throwing stuff at me and stuff. Uh, but they had pretty good security, so they kept people off me. Now I know some of the guys that have been stabbed walking down the aisle. People have done that, which I think is terrible. But yeah, so just the heat I got from being in Memphis and the Mid South and all that. That was probably the most I'd seen about people, being mad at me and wanting to fight me or follow me out into the parking lot, whatever it was. That was probably the only time.
yeah. If you could get back in wrestling and wrestle for any company right now, what company would that be?
Whew, man, I don't know. Uh, Probably I don't know, man. Um, Probably the WWE. Probably them
Yeah.
because Triple H was in WCW at one time. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Hmm.
And I knew him before he was Triple H, and so now he's running the whole show. But probably the WWE because more of the guys that were in that era or getting in that era when I was wrestling. Um, that's probably where I'd end up.
Yeah. Do you think you would still be able to get in the ring nowadays if you ever got asked to possibly like do any other match?
No way. My body has told me several times, "You're never doing that again." Uh, I was just in the gym yesterday, and I was going to go today, but I'm too sore from yesterday's workout, so I got to recover. I'm going to be um, 64 in September, so I'm not a spring chicken anymore.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'll be 64, believe it or not. I don't feel 64, but I am. I've got two daughters and a son, and then I've got one grandbaby and another one on the way. So I'm not a spring chicken. Even though in my mind I still think I'm 29, but my body gives me other signals.
Yeah, I didn't think you were that old either.
Yeah,
I thought you
yeah,
were younger.
yeah. I'm a hippie. Nah. uh, but I feel pretty good. Other than that, my health, I've been pretty blessed with my health, and like I said, I go to the gym. I went yesterday, and I was going to go today, but got caught up doing yard work because this is my off day from not being in the office, and I'm a little sore today. So I said, you know what? I'll just go tomorrow.
Yeah. What has been the most favorite wrestling company of yours that you've got to wrestle for?
The most favorite was probably the NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions. It was local. It was where I'm, in Charlotte, North Carolina, is where the offices were. I was born in North Carolina, so that was kind of home to me. So that was definitely um, that's Dusty Rhodes was the booker too. So that was just a good conglomerate of guys, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Would you rather join DX, NWO, APA, or BWO?
Definitely NWO. Those are my guys. You know, you
Yeah.
know, you got Hogan and I was just talking to Buff Bagwell about a couple weeks ago, and he and I are going to get together. But yeah, the NWO because uh, Diamond Dallas Page and Razor Ramon. He was the Diamond Stud when I wrestled him. All those guys were in my era, so the NWO would be kind of my deal. I would
Yeah.
I would like that a lot.
And I think you and NWO Sting would fit kind of as a tag team.
Right. A lot of people have said that. A lot of people have said that.
If you could have any band or singer perform your theme song, who would you want that to be?
Oh man, I got so many different bands and things that I like. Probably, probably Led Zeppelin. I was just
Yeah.
listening to their. I've got all their stuff, but yeah, probably Led Zeppelin. They just those guys just and you know who else though? I take that Queen would probably be another band.
Mm. Yeah. That'd
The
be
power,
great.
the power groups, all those guys because those are the groups I grew up with in high school. Van Halen is a local band out of California. And where I went to high school in Glendale, we had a junior senior prom, and Van Halen was supposed to be the guest band because they were the local band.
Wow.
Yeah, but also they they booked this way before they got famous, so they were booked, and then all of a sudden their first album came out and they canceled. So, but all the girls were mad because they liked David Lee Roth and all that. So,
Yeah. My favorite band is Kiss, and I
now
remember
there's another
that.
band, Kiss. Gene Simmons, he's a bad dude. I like Kiss is another one. I didn't even think about them, but yeah, Kiss was another band I grew up with. When they came along, I was probably 14 or 15 when they were just becoming famous. So Kiss is another band that would probably rock it out pretty good too, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Because I don't know if you're familiar with the wrestler, the Demon Dale Torberg, and he came out with the band Kiss for his entrance.
Yeah, we were using when I wrestled, we were using different, you know, our ring songs were, rock and roll songs from different bands, but we started getting popular, and all of a sudden we were getting letters from all the record companies saying we need to cease and desist playing other people's music while we walked out, to the ring. So that kind of killed that.
Yeah. What would you say is the least favorite wrestling move to receive?
The least favorite one? Um, well, if they're done correctly, it shouldn't. Any of them should be fine. But I would, when probably the least favorite one is one that the Road Warriors used to do, where they'd grab the guy and pick him up, put him on the other guy's shoulders, and then Hawk would jump off the top rope and clothesline the guy, and he'd like be 8 feet in the air doing like three flips. That'd probably be the one I wouldn't want to do.
Yeah. What is so about Vader? What is your thoughts on Vader and what was he like in the ring? Because I know I heard some stories about that. He was kind of rough, not just stiff, that he was kind of more than stiff in the ring. Did you ever get that side
Yeah,
of him?
yeah, he was. I mean, but he was really popular in Japan, and that's how they wrestled. I mean, if you watch, there's a match of Vader and Stan Hansen, and they are literally knocking the snot out of each other with hooks and back. I mean, they're closed fists and they're hitting each other. And Vader had a busted mouth and busted nose, and he just peeled that mask off and kept going. I mean, but that was just his style, you know. That was his style. So that's just the way it was. But yeah, he was very, very stiff, but he was more accustomed to the Japanese style. That's why, you know.
Yeah. What would you say has been like the hardest move you have tried to do to an opponent before?
Mm. I don't think there was a hardest move to do to opponent. I always made sure whatever I was doing, whoever I was working with could actually do it. I wouldn't do
Hmm.
anything that the other guy didn't feel comfortable doing, because you got to work together, right? So I, you know, there were certain moves I didn't want somebody to do on me because I just didn't like it. I didn't trust it, you know. So we would talk about those things. So I don't think there's really a move that we always made sure these moves were the moves we wanted to do, you know.
Yeah. Is there any stories of somebody crossing that path and actually doing the move to you when you told them not to?
No, because I was too big and too strong. They couldn't do anything I didn't want them to do. So I never was. I could. It never. No one ever tried to do that. I mean, that's just career suicide if you do something like that. Because then the word gets out that you're not cooperative and you're not willing to work with the guys, and nobody wants to wrestle you. You know, and then next thing you know, you're out of work. So
Yeah.
you don't want that kind of bad vibe going around the wrestling company or the boys. You don't want all that.
Hmm. If you could take any signature move from any other wrestler, what signature move would that be? Other than the one that you were doing.
Oh shoot, I'd take any of them. It didn't matter to me. I could do anything. It didn't matter to me. I could do anything. So, long as it looked good and it was realistic, and I made you believe that move was the move, then it didn't matter.
Yeah. And if you can pin them for the 3 count, then I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
What usually got you hyped for a match that you were going to be in?
Oh, just knowing. See, when I wrestled, a lot of times when we would go to the house shows, we wouldn't know who we were wrestling. We would see the card and everything, but sometimes that would change. So at the end of the day, sometimes it was a surprise who we were going to wrestle. Like when I wrestled Ric Flair on television, they never told us about the TV tapings till we got there. And I didn't realize I was wrestling Ric Flair till I looked at the roster and I realized, what am I doing in the main event with Ric Flair on television? And it was the caption was champion versus champion. And that was one of my first big matches. And I must say, I was nervous, man. And he just took care of me and made me look great. And like I said, that kind of put me on the map.
Yeah, I agree that match was like probably a highlight of your career. That's really
It
huge.
was
Yeah.
one of them. It was definitely one of them. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. What was your favorite thing to do after all your matches?
Depends on what city I was in. A lot of times it was just going out to dinner and just unwinding, especially you've been on the road for 4 or 5 days straight and you knew you didn't have to be anywhere the next day and you were going to your hotel. You just go find a nice restaurant or a nice bar or something and have a few drinks and have dinner and just relax, man. I mean, you're once you're done, I mean, or you just go back to your hotel room and go to sleep because you were so nice. You didn't have to get up early the next day. So yeah, just relaxing, man. That's my big thing.
Yeah. What would you say has been your most favorite venue you've got to wrestle at in your career?
Uh, there's a couple of them, but probably one of the coolest ones was wrestling in the Forum in Los Angeles. That was before they built the new Lakers, but the Forum was where the Lakers played basketball, and we were doing a pay per view, and I was sitting in the basketball lockers getting ready, and just seeing all those famous basketball stars, lockers there, and you're sitting there getting dressed, putting your boots on, and AC Green played with the Lakers, and AC Green's a really nice guy, and he came in the locker room just to meet me because he wanted his boys to meet me because his two little kids, they really like the Patriots and all that. So he came in, I got to meet him, and that was pretty inspirational, you know.
Wow, yeah. Has there been any time you have accidentally broke out of your wrestling persona?
Uh, Not that I can remember. It was pretty easy being Todd Champion because, like I said, I was a baby face most of my career. So I was kind of me in the ring, me out of the ring. It was just that's who I was, Now, when I went to Memphis and was a heel, I had to change my whole personality, just to, make sure, I was doing what I was supposed to do. But yeah, it wasn't a big deal because, like I said, most of my career I was a baby face. So wherever I went, was signing autographs and shaking hands and kissing babies. So that's easy. That's
Yep.
easy. Mm-hmm.
So I know you don't really do appearances now much in your wrestling, for your wrestling. Uh, what made you stop doing wrestling appearances and of the sorts?
Well, I got married for one, and had children, and just I kind of didn't pay. Once I was out of the business for a while, you just kind of lose track. You lose track of the guys. You just get busy with life in general. So once I was done and that business was over, I was starting a new business. I built a health club and I did all that stuff. So I was a finance manager for several car dealerships. Now I'm a business development manager for Subaru. So I got just into a different career and just didn't have the time be honest with you. Just didn't have the time.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten embarrassed in a wrestling match due to like a mistake or something?
Nah, because we were so good at. The reason we didn't make mistakes is because we didn't pre-plan our matches. We listened to the audience and we worked that way. If you have to plan every move you make, you're going to make a mistake. So it was like dancing. You just follow the leader, right? So he'll call the match. You listened, and not the only thing I did that was embarrassing is I was in Kansas City and was going out to the ring and music and everything, and I tripped and fell.
Mm.
I fell right before I got it. I missed the rope jumping up into the ring and fell on the floor. That was embarrassing. But anyway, that was probably the one most embarrassing thing that happened to me.
Yeah. What would you say has been the most scariest slash most dangerous incident in your wrestling career?
Scary. What do you mean by that? What scary incident? What in pertaining to what? In the ring, out
Like,
of the ring?
yeah, in the ring that like you've personally had happen to
Oh,
you or
it wasn't that scary. It kind of caught me off guard. Was the Barbarian and I were having a match, and he didn't tell me he was going to pick me up. And when he went to pick me up, he lost. He, I was sweaty, and he was sweaty, and he dropped me on my head on the outside of the ring by accident. That
mm,
was kind of scary, but luckily nothing happened. But he apologized about a million times. He didn't mean to do it, but that was pretty scary because I didn't realize it was going to happen, and then it happened, and it was too late at that point.
yeah, man, you're lucky because you could have had a broken neck, like Big
Oh,
E.
absolutely. Yeah, luckily I when I felt myself falling, I tried to protect myself a little bit, but it happened really fast. I mean, it was like boom, boom. I was on the floor, like, what happened? And he's going, I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I'm sorry. So
What has been the worst you have gotten injured in a match?
I broke my right ankle in the ring. We were in South Carolina, I think Camden, South Carolina, doing an outdoor show, and I can't remember who I was working with. It might have been Barbarian again. I don't know. We wrestled a lot, but um, I came off the ropes and the guy gave me an elbow, and my foot got caught in the canvas really weird. And when I fell down, I felt my ankle just snap in the ring. And we weren't even done with the match. So I finished the match, and then I went back to the locker room and I took my boot off, and my leg just swelled up. And then they took me to the emergency room. And of course, I was put in a cast after that. I was out for 6 weeks or 7 weeks.
Mm. If back in the day, during your wrestling days, you got told you couldn't medically wrestle for the rest of your life, what would you do?
Say that again.
If back in the day, during your wrestling days, you got told you couldn't medically wrestle for the rest of your life, what would you do?
I have no idea what I'd have done if they'd have told me that. I have a degree. I have a Bachelor of Science degree, so I'm sure I'd have probably went into coaching football because that's my passion
Yeah,
is football. I'd have probably went into coaching full time. I'd have probably done that.
you wouldn't get back into the football, uh, like actually doing it.
Well, at that point in time, once my professional career in football was over and I was wrestling, then they tell me you can't wrestle anymore. If I can't do that, then I'd probably go. I'd go into coaching, coach high school or college football. That's probably what I'd have done because I enjoyed doing that.
Yeah.
I used to volunteer coach for high schools and things, and I really enjoyed it. It's just they don't pay enough money, so
Yeah. What is the longest you've had to stay out of action for wrestling?
when I broke my ankle, that was about 6 or 7 weeks. That was the longest I'd had to stay out of it.
Yeah. What are some of the wrestling championships and achievements you have won so far in your career?
Well, there was the Central States Tag Team Champions, Mid South Heavyweight Champions, and the WCW uh, United States Tag Team Champion belts. Those are the ones.
Yeah. Which one do you feel like meant the most to you to hold?
Um, Probably the WCW United States Tag Team belts meant the most, and the Mid South too, because anybody that wrestled Jerry Lawler and you were lucky enough to, wear that strap, that was a pretty important. Just about everybody who was somebody has been, gone through the Mid South and wrestled Jerry Lawler. Of course, he became a big commentator on the WWE too. So uh, getting that strap and running with that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Do you feel like you are worthy enough to be part of a wrestling hall of fame like an indie or any of the sort?
Man, that's not up to me. That's up to the fans. Um, if my career probably would have been longer, probably, but my body of work was okay. It was good. Could have been better, probably. Could have been worse, could have been, but it wasn't. So timing is everything, and being fortunate. A lot of luck goes into that. Not being hurt, being with the right program, wrestling with the right guy. There's a lot of factors involved, in that decision. So that's really not up to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I honestly feel like you are worthy enough to be part of a hall of fame.
Well, man, that you're awful kind. I appreciate that.
Definitely with how you held the title in NWA, you know.
Right. Well, I mean, like I said, you never know. I may get a call someday. I may not. Who knows? But that's okay too.
Hmm. Who are five wrestlers you would put into the WWE Hall of Fame that are not in there yet that you think deserve it?
Man, I don't know. There's a bunch of them. Just about everybody that I think should be in is in. Gosh, I don't know. That's a good question. You'd have to get back with me on that one.
All right. What about who would you put in your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers?
Okay. Now I'm going to use the guys I'm familiar with. There's some guys that probably would be going there now, a different time, a different my era. Probably be Ric Flair be one. I would say Dusty Rhodes would be another one. I would say I think tag teams on the Rushmore would be Rock and Roll Express.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'd say the Four Horsemen as a group, probably Arn Anderson would be another one. Um, Ricky Steamboat would be another one. Man, I could put a ton of guys on that side of that mountain. Ton of them.
Yeah, there's only four heads, and I don't. Yeah, there's
I
a
know.
lot of wrestlers that you could choose.
Right.
What are four words you would describe your wrestling persona?
Four words was I'd say intense, charismatic, grateful, and fun.
Yeah. What are four words you would describe your tag team partner?
The same. I describe him the same. Curtis is a great guy and very talented guy, and we had good times together. That's for sure.
Yeah. What are three things that annoy you the most in wrestling?
Uh, probably probably what we talked about. Too much talk and not enough wrestling is one of them.
Yep.
Uh, I would like to see more physical matches. I'd like to see less backflips and more wrestling. Sorry about that. That's my dog now. I don't know what she's doing.
It's fine. What are three things that you like the most about wrestling?
Well, I just like the entertainment part of it. That's one thing. The camaraderie with the guys is another thing, and just the overall creativity of it. You know, I think that's three things that I would say.
Yeah. If you are upset or anxious during or before a match, what do you do to help yourself calm down?
Well, I just go be by myself for about 10 or 20 minutes, and that's usually what I do. So I've never been really upset before a match, or I've been anxious. I think everybody gets nervous because you want to do a good job, you know, and you want the fans to
Yeah.
appreciate what you're doing. So that's it. Pretty simple.
Yeah. If you could wrestle anywhere in the world, where would that be?
If I could wrestle anywhere in the world, I would like to wrestle in Abu Dhabi because I hear everybody that's gone there they love it. I think that'd be a cool place to go. I've never been.
Where's Abu Dhabi?
Saudi Arabia,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
like one of the richest cities in the world. I mean, that's where all the oil guys live, and they've taken the desert and turned it into a paradise. And they got cool buildings and just cool stuff. And everybody that I've known that's gone there is just like said, man, it's cool. It's very, very, very different. Very cool.
Yep. I know WWE goes to Saudi Arabia every
Mhm.
now and there for the Crown Jewel pay-per-view. So,
Right, right. See, back then when I wrestled, we didn't go to those places. I mean, it was all in the U.S. It wasn't outside the U.S. Now, there guys went to Japan, but it wasn't. It was Japan wrestling. It wasn't the company going to Japan and putting on the whole show. So,
yeah. Yeah, recently it seems like every pay-per-view now is starting to go to all around each like France, Germany,
yeah,
Scotland, and
yeah, it's
yeah.
getting. Like I said, it's global now. It's global now because of television and social media and all that. So,
Yep. Have you ever wrestled or done anything or went through Wisconsin before?
let's see. I don't think so. I don't think so. Are you a Green Bay Packers fan?
Well, actually, I live in Wisconsin, but mine and my dad's favorite Packer or mine and my dad's favorite football team is the Detroit Lions.
Okay.
But our secondary favorite team is the Packers.
Well,
So if it's
Jordan Love, the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, played at Utah State where I went to school. He was our quarterback.
oh
Yeah. So he's doing really
wow
good. Yeah. Pretty cool.
yeah, what would you say has been the best fan art you've received in your wrestling career if you have received any?
I have. It was a sketch. Some some kid. I mean, it was really good. This kid, he wasn't. He was probably 12 years old, but he sketched this big drawing of me. I guess he took something off the internet or wherever he got it, and he sketched it and he sent it to me, and it was pretty impressive. I mean, this kid's got he's a pretty artistic kid, and I asked him if he wanted it back. He said, "No, I wanted you to have it." And I said, "Okay, great." So I've got it upstairs.
Yeah. So, with your wrestling memorabilia that you have or had from your wrestling career, do you have that all like set up in like a certain place and all? Do you
I've
still?
got a lot of it's in storage. I just got a couple things here at the house that I in my office upstairs. All my football helmets and all that stuff in my belts, and then I've got my jacket up there. I didn't put everything. I just don't have enough room with all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, but um, I'm working on trying to get it all organized. It takes a while. So,
Yep. Which wrestler would you say has the best wrestling gear ever, in your opinion?
oh shoot, there's a ton of them. um, old school wise, probably Ric Flair with all those fancy robes that he had. I mean,
Mm.
Ric Flair had some of the prettiest robes you'd ever seen. I'm sure you've seen pictures, but seeing them in person is even more impressive to me. Now they've got some pretty cool stuff out there now, but the stuff that I remember were the Ric Flair wrestling robes. That was pretty cool, and probably the Road Warriors. Their gimmicks with the shoulder pads and all that. That was pretty cool. I thought. I like that a lot.
Yeah. What would you say is a number one top unforgettable moment in your wrestling career that is still with you today that you'll like never forget?
When we won the WCW United States Tag Team belts, we didn't know that was going to happen. Had no idea. They kept that hush hush till we got to the building. And then the next thing you know, we're wrestling the Freebirds and beating them for the title. That was probably the biggest surprise, I guess, because we hadn't been with WCW but about 6 or 7 months, and all of a sudden now we're the United States Tag Team Champions. Had no idea that was coming. So that was pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah. Do you guys think your run as champions could have been longer, or do you think it was efficient as how it went?
It could have went longer for sure. It could have went longer. We had some good matches with the different tag teams. I wish WCW was changing a lot. There was a lot of back office stuff going on, and if they would have just stuck with us a little longer and let us wrestle, like Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko a couple more times because we wrestled them for the World Tag Team titles too. If they'd have stuck with it a little longer, I think it could have been really, really big, really big.
Yeah. From what I seen, you guys only held it for 85 days. Yeah, I feel like they should have gave you more time with the titles
Yeah,
because
and
you
what
guys
was
were
so
a bit.
funny is after we dropped the straps, uh, then the next person had them. It was 45 days later. They were giving them to somebody else. So it just at some point they just nobody could make a decision. Say let's work this and make this a long term program. You know, and that was the downfall of WCW. They nothing was ever. They didn't stick to the program long enough for it to really take hold. For people to really get with it. So, but that wasn't my call. So that was a company call. So
Yeah, just knowing that you won the titles is a big thing. So,
yeah.
what did your meal prep look like on a day of a wrestling show for you?
Oh my gosh. I was 310 pounds at my peak. And so I didn't have a meal prep. I ate everything. I mean, they would cater food to us during the TV shows. So, but I ate a lot of protein back then, probably 10,000 calories a day just to keep my body weight up. So I just ate a lot of steak, a lot of meat, a lot of protein, a lot of vegetables, stuff like that. I mean, it wasn't scientific at all. It was just that's all you had. So
Yeah.
the more calories you consume, the more muscle, right? So that's what we did.
Yep. What was your main go like beverage most of the time to help keep you energized for a wrestling event that you were taking part of?
Well, they didn't have a lot of like energy drinks back then. It was just drinking lots of Gatorade and stuff like that. There wasn't all these energy drinks you got now. So it's just Gatorade and water and stuff like that, just your
Yeah.
normal sports drinks.
If you could or would get any tattoo, what would that be?
Oh, it'd probably be, I like the American Eagle. I'd probably get something like that. I like that a lot. Something with the flag wrapped, like the American Eagle wrapped around with a flag, in his mouth or something like that.
Wow, yeah, that'd be cool. What is your favorite current and old wrestlers theme song from wrestling history?
Man, I don't even know, man. That's a good question. Current, I couldn't tell you because they all sound the same to me. They all come out to something, right?
Yeah.
Probably Ric Flair's rings that they used to play his music, the 2001 Space Odyssey theme song. I think that was the coolest because when you heard that, you knew, Ric Flair was in the house. So I like that a lot.
Yep. What was your least favorite theme song ever from wrestling history?
Man, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't be honest and tell you. To be honest with you, I never listened to them that much because there was always something different. So I never really thought about the songs that much and the ring songs and things like that. So
Yep. If you could go back and revisit any year of your wrestling career, what year would that be and why?
probably be probably 1988, 89 Great American Bash here in Atlanta in Fulton County Stadium because the Bash was a big deal then, Great American Bash. And it was always in July, hottest day of the year, and it was outdoor matches. And they always had some big time country western singers there. Like Charlie Daniels was one of them. David Allen Coe was another one. So those were the cool ones where you got to kind of hang out backstage with some of those musical guys, Western star, country Western stars. And that was always cool. That was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. If you could go back in time and tell your younger self something motivational towards being a wrestler, what would that be?
Um, I could tell my younger self. I'd probably say get an agent next time. That's probably what I'd tell my younger self. Get a lawyer to look at the contracts better than I did.
Yeah. If you came with a warning label, what would it say?
Um, if I came with a warning label,
Yep.
if I came with what would a warning label say on me? Um, approach was approach with caution. That'd be my warning label.
Yeah, that's good. What are some things you are still that you were still striving to achieve in wrestling that you never got to achieve?
Probably being a world champion is one of them. Being a world champion. having that honor, you know, that's probably something that I wish I could have achieved.
Yeah, that's definitely probably a lot of people's dreams is to definitely hold the main championship like Cody Rhodes. And
Right, right.
what is the first thing you think about doing to your opponent as the match starts?
The first thing I think about, I don't really think about it that much, to be honest with you. I mean, it's just um, you just kind of have a game plan depending on who you're wrestling. You know, if it's the barbarian or if it's, you know, a different guy, whatever the guy can do, that's what you think about. What am I going to do with this guy? What can he do? What can't he do? You know, how can we make this work? That's going through your head pretty much.
Yeah. If you could have entranced with any animal as the WCW Patriots, what animal would that be?
Oh, I don't know. Shoot, any animal. Uh, hmm, any animal. It'd have to be something cool, that's for sure. I'd say probably a lion, big lion or
Yeah.
tiger, something like that.
As soon as I asked the question, I immediately thought of what would be really cool is you could bring out an eagle,
Eagle would be
and
good too. Yeah,
because it would fit your persona, and then Firebreaker would bring out a Dalmatian
yeah,
dog.
that would be. Hey, that's good. That's a great idea. A great idea. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I always told Curtis, I said, if we ever get this thing further out, I'd like to drive a tank into the arena, a big old tank.
Yeah, for like a big WrestleMania
Yeah,
entrance.
yeah, drive a tank in. That'd be pretty cool. I don't think anybody's ever done that.
Yeah, I mean, besides Shotzi, like the
Yeah,
toy tank, but yeah.
or a Hummer with a big machine gun on top of it.
Yeah. What is your favorite wrestling quote?
Wrestling quote. I don't think I have a favorite wrestling quote, but I do have a favorite quote. Uh, that was in the locker room with the 49ers. It says, "There's two types of people in the world: champions and those who wish they were." That's kind of one of my favorite quotes. Another quote is, "Champions are made, not born." That's another good one that I like.
Yeah. If you could come up with your own quote, or if you already have one, what would it be?
I don't know. Uh, I don't know, man. That's a good question. You got to give me time when you ask me these questions so I can think of an answer. Off the top of my head, it'd take me a minute to figure that one out. Here's a good quote I'd probably use. "There's two types of people in the world: champions and those who wish they were."
That's great, yeah. Now I'll bring it back to the question that you told me to bring you back to. Who are five wrestlers you would put into the WWE Hall of Fame?
That aren't in now, that are not in there
Yeah.
now. I don't know, man. I have no idea. There's so many of them, and uh, there's so many great people that aren't in there, and it's just I couldn't. I'll be honest with you, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I'd have to think about that one. Once again, there's so many guys that aren't in there that probably should be for whatever reason. um, that aren't. So that's a tough one.
Yeah, like my personal thoughts, I would definitely like to see Cindy Lauper. I feel like she's definitely way overdue, and same as like Demolition, they
Yeah,
definitely deserve to be in
yeah,
there.
yeah. I thought they got inducted. Had they not been inducted yet? The Hall of Fame.
No, they didn't because apparently there's something like a disagreement between the WWE and Demolition or something.
Oh, okay. I got you. And maybe I don't know. Has Lex Luger been inducted? I don't think
No,
he
but
has.
they were actually in talks of him getting inducted this year, but yeah, no, he
Yeah.
hasn't been.
Right. Right.
So maybe next year I would could see him being in there.
Could be. Could be. I want is Magnum TA in the Hall of Fame? He is, isn't he? I
I'm
don't
not
know.
positive, but on top of
He'd
my
be
head, I
one.
don't think he is.
He'd be one that should be in there for sure.
Yeah. Would you forgive your opponent if they injured you?
It all depends on the injury and how stupid it was. I mean, you're going to get hurt in the ring. Things are going to happen, but if somebody's careless and they hurt you, then it's tough to forgive somebody that's careless, knowing that you have to make a living too. So that really would all depend. You know.
Yeah. If if you could choose any manager to manage the WCW Patriots, who would you want to manage you guys?
Oh, I don't know, man. That's a good question. Um, there wasn't, man. I don't know. Hmm. If and probably because he wasn't wrestling at the time, would be Dusty Rhodes because he's the American Dream. I think that's just a natural fit. You got the American Dream and the Patriots, and that's all about Americana, right? So I think that would be a good combination.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. That would be good, yeah. If you could manage any wrestler now, like right now in your career, who would you want to manage?
I don't know. Never really thought about that one. Man, that's another good question I couldn't answer off the top of my head, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Those those are good questions. I just don't. Nowadays I don't watch it enough to say that'd be the guy I'd want to work with, or that'd be the guy I'd like to work with. I don't watch it enough to give you an honest answer.
Yeah, I understand, yeah. How did you come up with your wrestling name, Todd Champion?
Dusty Rhodes gave that name to me one night. We were doing a TV taping, and I'd been wrestling under my real name. And Dusty one day just came in and said, "Come here, I need to talk to you," and took me into the shower and said, "Hey, I've been thinking about a ring name for you, and I've got a good name for you." I said, "What is it?" He goes, "Todd Champion. It's got a nice ring to it." I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And so that's how Todd Champion was born.
Yeah. It's not too difficult because it was just your first name and then he changed Bradford into Champion.
The champion, yeah, it just it does kind of flow. TC Todd Champion is an easy name to remember, you know, so it worked.
Yeah. How did the tag team name of WCW Patriots come along for
That
you and Chip?
that was when they brought us in. They had talked. I guess they were looking for an All American tag team, and that was another one of Dusty Rhodes' creations. He one that came up with the name the Patriots. And they really, it was right after you were too young for this, but Desert Storm had happened where we'd went into Iraq, and so they wanted to do something patriotic, and so that's where the Patriots name came from, and from there it just kind of took a life of its own after that. But that's how it all got started.
Oh, okay. If you had to change your wrestling name, what would you change it to?
Man, I have no idea. I have no idea what I'd change it to. That Todd Champion was pretty much one of the best names I could think of, or they could think of, and I don't think there's anything else that really would go with me, other than that name. I can't see myself being anything else.
Yeah. If there is anything you would or could change about your wrestling style in the ring, what would that be?
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot. Every time I watch some of my videos, I go, I should have did that differently, or I should have did that differently. Um, I don't know. I think your wrestling style over time, as your confidence builds, gets better, and then you start adding to your repertoire. So, I really at that point I couldn't tell you anything else I would change. You know,
Yeah. If you went for your finisher or signature move and it didn't work, do you have a plan B to do it right away after?
I just come up with something right then and there. I would do. There's other things, if for some reason that finishing move didn't work out like it was supposed to, I you know, I'd do something else. I'd figure it out. I'd do a submission move of some sort, probably. Instead of the flying backwards elbow, if that didn't work, I'd probably use a submission type move, like maybe a
Yeah.
sleeper hold or something like that, a reverse arm bar or something.
Mm-hmm. So if you could dump any type of food and beverage on your opponent, what food and beverage would that be?
Oh, I don't know, man. Uh, Probably sloppy joes and beer,
Yeah.
nice and messy. And
And then the beer would probably lead to be sticky. So,
yeah, with the sloppy joes and the beer, yeah, that'd be a good mess.
hmm, I'm pretty sure that's actually what Baron Corbin dumped on Roman Reigns that one time on SmackDown. He dumped Sloppy Joe or something of.
Oh, did he? Okay, I didn't see that one.
Yeah.
All right.
So, say back in the day you were injured, but you got a one in a lifetime call. And this is one in a lifetime, so you most likely won't ever get the call again. Asking if you could work for WWE, AEW, TNA, New Japan, or any of the other bigger companies. Would you take up that one in a lifetime offer?
When would I do that? When I was still wrestling, or when did you say I get hurt, or so? What'd you say? Say it again. What's your question? What was the question?
If if you were injured and back in the day when you were wrestling.
Right. Yeah, I would. They'd have to pay me a lot of money to do it, though. If I'm going to wrestle hurt, I'm going to make it worth my while.
Yeah. Would you rather wrestle Rick Steiner, Scott Steiner, or both at the same time?
We have wrestled them, as a matter of fact. uh, Either one would be fine with me. They're both good guys. Wouldn't matter
Yeah.
to me at all.
What would you say has been the worst weapon you've got beat slash hit with in a match?
Probably the Russian chain match with the Russian chain. That'd probably be the worst one. I got busted open. My head busted open pretty good on that one. So that'd be probably the
Mm.
worst one.
What are your hobbies other than wrestling?
Oh, going to the gym. Man, I'm a homebody now. So, I work, go to the gym, go see play with the grandkids. I've got a mountain bike that I ride. I live in Kennesaw, Georgia. So there's Kennesaw Mountain over here, and it's a big national park. It's about 3 miles from me. And I like to hike. Like to hike up the mountain and stuff like that. And hobby, I travel around, go when my school's playing college football season. I'll fly to a couple games, or I'll fly to Utah and go to a couple games, and so that's kind of what I do.
Yeah. Would you rather wrestle Taz, DDP, or Blue Meanie?
DDP.
Yeah.
He doesn't live too far from me anyway, so
Oh,
yeah.
he could help you get back in shape with the DDP yoga to get back in the ring.
Yeah, I've done his yoga. It works good, but like I said,
Oh,
you know, the spirit is willing, but the body's not. So, it is what it is.
yeah. Who would you consider as a brother and a sister in wrestling?
Hmm. Sister, I couldn't tell you that part. Probably a brother would be Curtis or Sam Houston.
Yeah.
Those two guys, because I wrestled with both those guys. Me and Sam Houston tag teamed in the Great American Bash against Ivan Koloff and Nikita Koloff. You know, the whole tour. So he and I spent a lot of time together too.
Mm-hmm. If you had one last match, like a retirement match, now, uh, who would you want it to be against?
If I had a retirement match, I'd want it to be against Steve Austin.
Hmm.
That'd be my guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And have, you know what would be cool? Is have Jerry the King Lawler as a special guest referee.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be different. He'd do it too.
Yeah.
He'd do
Bring
it
back
too.
the olden days with your guys' big rivalry.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh huh.
If you could wrestle or have a segment with any actor, who would that be?
Um, any actor, who would it be? Who do I like? Man, there's so many of them. Um, Probably Sylvester Stallone.
Mm, yeah. If you could guest star in any TV show and or movie, what would it be?
If I could guest star in any movie or TV show, probably I'd like to guest star in Yellowstone.
Mm,
I love that show. Love it because it reminds me a lot of Utah. That area, Colorado. And all that Wyoming and all that area where I spent 5 years of my life. So Yellowstone would be kind of cool to do. That'd be
yeah.
fun.
That's funny because, like, one of my previous guests just said they would like to be in Yellowstone too.
Who was that? Which one was that?
I'm pretty sure. Rudy Boy Gonzalez, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
my daughter loves horses, and I was raised, been around farms and horses and stuff. So that'd be kind of cool to dress up like a cowboy and ride around. That I'd enjoy
Yeah.
that. It'd be a lot of fun.
Would you or have you ever thought of back in the day of trying for any type of boxing, MMA, or UFC?
No, I didn't. Never thought about it. Now, when I had my gym, I had a professional fighter who taught, you know, point fighting and MMA stuff, and I'd work out with him and train with him all the time. But I never thought about doing it. I didn't, I've probably been pretty good at it because I would work with him all the time. But no, I never looked at it as competing in that kind of sport.
Yeah. When you were growing up, were you more of like a shy, quiet kid or outgoing, loud, and excited?
Uh, I was probably kind of middle of the road kid. I was an only child, no brothers or sisters. So I was kind of, I made my own fun. I mean, by yourself, you kind of get creative and play cowboys and Indians by yourself and do all that kind of stuff. So I'd say I was kind of middle of the road on that.
Yeah. So for some time, you went under the ring name Pero Russo. Where did that come from, and how did you come up with that name?
Okay. I didn't. That's an internet trick. Somebody made that up. That wasn't me.
Ah,
Remember, I told you that stuff on the internet? Yeah, and that was one of them. Because people kept asking that, and I said, "Why do they keep asking me that?" And then I looked it up, and it was in there under some profile or something. And no, that I never did do that. That wasn't me.
yeah.
That was
Now
an
I do
imposter.
remember. Yep, I remember you telling me that there was some false stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't realize. Yeah.
yeah.
So, what was your reaction when you got asked to wrestle for the WCW/WWF?
Well, I was in California when Dusty called me. I was actually on the set of Tango and Cash. I was doing some stuff on that movie, and I got the call. So I'd already wrestled in NWA, so I was really surprised when Dusty called me out of the blue like he did. So I told him, I said, well, I looked at it this way. I was single, didn't really have any ties to anywhere, and if the money was good, I'd go do it. And that's kind of what made
Yeah.
my decision. Yeah, absolutely.
What is one core memory or match of yours that you'll never forget from particularly WCW and WWF as a singles match and a tag team match?
Well, tag team match was probably uh, beating the Freebirds, and that was a big deal. That was a really big deal. And then probably the Mid South singles match, Mid South heavyweight championship belt. That was a big deal too. Those two things stick out.
Yep. Who is one wrestler from the WCW WWF that was in there when you were that you'll never forget other from your tag team partner?
Man, there's so many guys, man. I mean, there's just not one personality. There's a lot of them I've never forgotten. They were all good guys. I can't really pinpoint one of them because there were so many good guys during that time.
Yeah. How would you say the wrestlers and workers treated you backstage during WCW? Were you like one of the boys, or did you hang out by yourself most of the time?
I was one of the boys. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was a big, I wouldn't say it's one big happy family, but it's pretty close. Everybody got along, everybody goofed around and, you know, play pranks on each other backstage, and stuff like that. So, so yeah, I was one of the boys, definitely.
Yeah. Who would you say you hung around with the most during your time there?
Gosh. Well, probably Curtis. Me and Curtis did a lot of stuff together. He'd spend the night here in Atlanta with me because I had a place here, had a house. I'd bought a house when I was wrestling here, so he'd come over and always stay with me. and I'd go up there, Charlotte, and I'd stay with him. So we hung out together quite a bit, quite a bit.
Yeah. Who was one wrestler you never got to get into the ring with that you wished you could have in WCW or WWF?
That I didn't get in the ring with, probably I'd say probably Jake the Snake Roberts.
Mm,
He'd be because
yeah,
he was such a great heel, you know, and he would have
yeah,
been great to work with. He'd have been awesome.
yeah. I could definitely see you two having a great match together. Also, I would have liked to seen you wrestle like Rowdy Piper.
Yeah, he'd have been fun too. That'd have been a fun one too.
Yeah, because he's great on the mic, and he's like one of the best heels in my opinion.
Absolutely, absolutely, he
Yeah.
was. Sure was.
So, how did you and Firebreaker Chip meet and become friends, and how did you guys
Well, we
get
met.
along to become?
We got along great, but we met. I'd never met him before, and they flew me in the same time they were flying him in, so we could both meet. And then once we met, Dusty told us what we were going to do or what he wanted to do. And then we met with the board of directors for Turner Entertainment as partners, and we'd never done that before. And that's how we met. And then from then on, we kind of, because when you got a tag team partner, you want to travel together, you want to learn each other's moves, you want to do all this stuff to make sure that you guys are on the same page. And so that's how we did it.
Yeah, and when he gave you the partner, Dusty Rhodes, did you see it working out? Like when you seen him for the first time, did you see it working out, or
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, we hit it off right away. We had good chemistry right away. So it was the sky was the limit at that point.
yeah? Do you still talk to Firebreaker Chip and keep in touch with them to this day? And
Yeah, we don't talk as much anymore as we used to, but every once in a while we'll say hello or wish each other Merry Christmas or something.
yeah, it'd be great to have you two like reunite at like a convention or at like a
Yeah,
signing somewhere.
yeah, yeah, that would be nice. I'd like to do that. If somebody could arrange that, that'd be fun. That'd be good to get back with him and bring up some old stories.
Yeah. So you and Chip won the WCW United States Tag Team titles on August 12th of 1991. How did it feel in that exact moment for you when you won the tag team titles?
Well, like I told you earlier, we didn't know that was going to happen till we got to the building and they pulled us aside and told us what was going on. And we were like kind of dumbfounded because we hadn't been there very long. We didn't know we were that popular. We knew people
Yeah.
recognized us because of TV, but we didn't realize we were that popular. And apparently the front office thought we were. So it was a shocker. That's for sure.
Yep. So, what was the difference, if there were any, of the WCW and WWF backstage and locker rooms that you noticed when you were there?
They're all about the same. They're all about the same. Um, the mechanics are the same. The preparation's the same. You just got different faces. That's the only difference. That's the only difference.
Yeah. What was the background and similarities of having you go under like a military slash army persona and Firebreaker going under like a firefighter persona? I kind of see it as like two different type of personas. So how did that?
Well, that was all based on, you know, Desert Storm, first responders, the military. That's all kind of interwoven, So that's why the Patriots gimmick worked so well, was because you had the first responder, you had the military. I mean, you got, one side protecting the country, the other side, saving your life, So that's how that was kind of the psychology for that.
Oh, okay. Then we could have added Big Boss Man in there.
Yeah, there were supposed to be four characters in the Patriots. There was supposed to be
Oh,
me, uh, Curtis, his firebreaker Chip, an astronaut, and a policeman. There were
mm.
four original characters, and for some reason it got whittled down to us two, and they didn't move on the other ones.
Yeah, that would have been great if the
Yeah, it's all geared toward kids, to marketing for dolls and stuff like that, the wrestling figures and all that.
yeah. So I'm gonna ask, like, what was it like to share the ring with? And I'm gonna name a wrestler. And what was it? What was he like in the ring? And I'll name off like a couple or so wrestlers, and
Okay.
you know.
All right.
So what was it like to share the ring with Cactus Jack? And what was he like in the ring?
Captain Jack was great. You know, he's he had his own way of doing things. So, but yeah, Cactus Jack was fine. I mean, he wasn't, the best athlete, as far as an athlete is concerned. But his image and his persona and the way he did what he did, he's the only guy that could have pulled that off. Nobody else could have done that.
Yeah.
So he's good. Yeah.
What about the Great Kabuki?
Um, did I wrestle him? Did you do some research? I don't think I never wrestled Kabuki, but there again, Japanese style athlete, very agile, could do anything really he wanted to in the ring. Could do anything.
Yeah. Pork Chop Cash.
Boy, you're going old school.
Yep.
Pork Chop Cash was in the Central States when I went in there. He's just an old school dude, man. He was, before me. He'd already been in the business probably 20 years before I even thought about it. So he'd be an old school dude, easy to work with. Wouldn't be a lot of high flying going on. There'd be a lot of wrestling holds and punching and scratching and biting and kicking.
What about Thunderfoot, Joel Deaton?
Well, great guy. Wrestled him a bazillion times. Joel Deaton was, and Gene Ligon was the other Thunderfoot. And Gene Ligon was actually a really good friend of mine. We worked out in the gym together a lot. But yeah, Joel Deaton was great. Joel was a piece of cake. Good athlete, big tall guy. Yeah, he was good.
Yeah. What about Bill Kazmaier?
Bill and I never wrestled against each other. He was the world's strongest man at one time. But we were really good friends, and Bill was a big, strong dude, and that's kind of how they promoted him in the ring, as that type of thing. Um, but we wrestled. I think we tagged one time together, but we didn't wrestle against each other.
Yeah. What about Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker?
Oh, the Sarge, I loved him. Yeah, I knew him before he was Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker too. So I knew him back in the NWA days. And
Yeah.
anyway, so but yeah, he's a great dude, great guy. Um, his career he ended up being in the the training center for WCW, training a lot of guys. So
Yeah. Yeah, he was like the main guy there.
Yeah.
What about Bob Cook?
Oh, Bob Cook. Yeah, man. He was a great worker, man. Bob Cook was a great worker, easy to work with. We had some TV matches against each other, and yeah, he was great. He was great.
Someone you might not really remember, but Jim Boss.
Jim Boss. I don't remember him.
Yeah, because I looked up the match and I seen that you guys had a match against each other. But yeah, I honestly didn't really know who it was. I think he just had like one match. I
Did he?
think it was one match and it was against you, honestly. So
Okay. It might have been one of those quick TV tapings, 2 minute matches, 3 minute matches, something like that. But I honestly don't remember that guy. Be honest with you.
yeah, and sounds like a parody of Jim Ross.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What about Dustin and Dusty Rhodes?
Well, Dusty, was the guy that hired me and gave me my start. You know,
Hmm.
and Dustin, I remember I had a match with Stunning Steve Austin, and his valet manager. She interfered with the match, and he beat me. And then Dustin came out, after the fact, and complained about the cheap shot. But Dustin, just like his dad, you know, wrestled like him, good athlete, tall, big tall kid, at the time. So, but Dusty was my guy. I mean, Dusty was a guy that he told me if I didn't do what I was supposed to, he was straight with me and made me better. You know, so
Yep,
I'll always be appreciative of what him giving me my start.
definitely. What about Sting?
Didn't have a Sting and I were friends, but we didn't socialize together. Sting and Luger were really good friends. Um, but we really didn't socialize that much. I mean, we goofed around and back together and did stuff. But Sting's a good guy. I mean, he just retired. Good Lord, he's my age. So God bless him
Yeah,
for doing that. Sticking with it as long as he had. So you know, we were business partners, so to speak, as far as that was concerned.
yeah. To see what he was doing now, uh, till his retirement in AEW, it was great to see.
Yeah, yeah,
For his age, definitely
yeah,
his last match. He
yeah.
did like a street fight, and what about Pez Watley?
Pistol Pez. Oh, I love Pistol Pez Watley. He's the old NWA. That back when I wrestled. He Pistol Pez. He was the man too, and he was out of the NWA type of era. So
Yeah. What would you say was your reaction when you got asked to wrestle for NWA, since that was like your first big company?
well, I knew it was coming. I just didn't know when. Uh, I didn't know how fast. I didn't know if I was ready. All those factors, come in line. And so I didn't really know any better either. I'd never been in the wrestling business before. I didn't know there were other promotions, to be honest with you. I knew there were other promotions, but I didn't really. The NWA was kind of like the major leagues. There were smaller promotions around other than the WWF at the time. So if you were in the NWA on that roster or the WWF roster, those were the two major league wrestling promotions. Everything else was kind of like the minor leagues till you got to that point. So I was pretty fortunate not to. I paid my dues in the NWA. Don't get me wrong. I paid my dues and did all that. But that was the company you wanted to be with. That was the company.
Yeah. If you got asked now in your career in life to return to the NWA to make like one last run or just like a special guest appearance, to be like a special guest referee or for like a Legends Night, an anniversary, or even backstage work, or just be there in attendance, would you take up that offer?
Oh yeah, it'd be fun to get back and just kind of dip your toes back in the pool a little bit, so to speak. Yeah, it'd be fun. I'd like to. I would be. I think being a guest referee would be kind of fun. That'd just get you back in the ring, but you don't have to take all the bumps.
Yeah. And there's some great workers in there that you are familiar with when you were in the WCW, like Ricky Morton. I feel like
Hmm.
you would have a good special guest referee match with him.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
there's
absolutely.
many good names.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's finish off this interview with two more questions.
Okay.
So, what is one thing you would tell your fans, wrestling fans?
Well, I don't really know. I just you know what I'd say? I say thank you for all the years of support. Um, Sticking with me thick and thin, and just making me feel good about my work and my body of work of what I do, and still kind of remembering who I am, and what I did. The internet's a wonderful thing now. They can go in there and watch matches from whenever, and so my memory's still alive. It's like I haven't aged a bit in those videos.
Yeah.
So they watch those, and they try to reach out once in a while. But that, just thank them for all the faithful being fans all these years. You know, makes somebody like me who's retired and doesn't do that stuff anymore, makes you feel kind of good. Well, people do still remember me and still appreciate what I did. Everybody likes to be appreciated.
Yeah. Now, for my last question, do you have any advice for me to become a wrestler?
Yeah, make sure whoever is the wrestling school you're going to is a legit wrestling school. And before you think about going in front of a crowd, make sure that you have all the basic moves and skills down, so it's second nature to you. And then you've got to be kind of a smart business person too, and think of see you can be more creative in what you want your persona to be versus what I did. I had to wait for somebody to tell me what to do, where you'll have that creative ability to say, I'd like to be this, but and be honest with yourself too. Don't you know it's with all the thousands of people that want to be wrestlers, there's very few that make it, big or make money at it. I made a really good living and I was very fortunate. It's kind of like professional football. You got out of the thousands and thousands of college football players from little colleges to big colleges, only 2% make it in the NFL. And there's only, God, I don't know how many players, not that many players, 55 a team, 60 maybe on each team. So, and you think of all the thousands of college athletes are coming out trying to play. So, you're going to have to be honest with yourself, work hard at it. If you're serious about it, you're going to have to sacrifice, and you know, when everybody else is sleeping, you're going to be working out. You're going to be doing things that nobody. You got to do the thing. You got to be able to do the things that nobody else wants to do. If you do that, you'll be successful. Because if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? If it was easy,
Yeah.
everybody'd be a wrestler and be superstars and whatever. It's not that easy. It's a tough road. It's not all glamour and glitz. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication. And you've got to be able to kind of wrestle to and understand that it'll take some time to learn your craft. And if you're patient and you can do all those things, you got a shot.
Yeah.
That'd be my recommendation to you. And hit the weights.
Yeah. Thank you.
You got to put some muscle on, man.
Yeah. In school. I have this class, strength and conditioning, which is my first class, and we work out. And I also have a gym in my basement here at my house. I
Gotcha.
just have to start working out more.
Yeah, I mean, and you're going to have to get in really good cardiovascular shape, because if you have to go an hour a night every night for 280 days, you better be in shape. or you won't make it.
Yep.
So get your cardiovascular in. You almost have to train like a boxer. I don't know if you've got where you go to school, they've got a track or something. I'd try to start running the stadium steps, doing things like that to get your heart rate up so you can perform at a high level every night. That's what made Ric Flair so good. The guy was in such great shape. You couldn't make him tired.
Yeah.
He was like the ever ready bunny. He just goes and goes and goes and goes. You know. So that's what I'd
Yep.
recommend to you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
And I thank you for taking your time out to do this interview with me. It was a pleasure to have you on here.
No problem. No problem. Thank you for having me. And if you're going to be a pro wrestler, you're going to have to pay your dues, but just work hard and let the chips fall where they may. And if you need any pointers while you're going through this process, just feel free to reach back out to me, and I'll try to help you the best I can.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Have a good rest of your night.
All right, man. Take care. God bless. Bye bye.
Yep. God bless you too. Bye.